In this video, I'll show you how I built a WhatsApp automation sales system in n8n. By the end of this video, I'll elaborate step by step, note by note on creating this automation, and this system is primarily for businesses receiving a lot of WhatsApp messages. The example I'm going to use is a music school in Singapore. It's a fake music school. The typical sales process of many music schools is they land on a nice website and they see a lot of WhatsApp Ask Now button. So they'll click on the button and there are some templates that can be put in the WhatsApp message. In this case, it's "Hi, I'm interested to know more." So now let me demonstrate this automation. So I'll just paste the message that I got from the actual music school. So I'm saying, "Hi, I'm interested to know more." And usually it takes maybe about, I would say a few seconds for it to reply. So it says, "Hello there, we'd love to help you find the perfect piano program. Are you asking for yourself or for a child? I have 3 children aged 4, 5, and 8. They have no experience." The main objective of this automation is to encourage the potential customer to book a trial class. It's also asking which outlet I prefer. I think I just want to proceed a trial class for my 4-year-old. So that's wonderful. We'll be happy to arrange a $20 trial lessons for a 4-year-old to experience our piano playground program. I'll prefer classes to be at Orchard because it's more convenient. It's saying that actually for 4-year-olds, right, they only have programs at Tampines Hub. In the case of a music school, right, there are certain schedules that they only can have and there are certain schedules that they can't meet, right? This is like a typical objection that the LLM needs to overcome. The next classic question to ask is then, how much are the fees and are there any setup costs? Got it. So that's a great question. Let me break down the cost for you. I think I would like to proceed with a trial class for my 8-year-old at Orchard. What is the schedule there? It's now telling me the available time slots, which is quite typical of any sales admin when it comes to receiving WhatsApp messages from potential customers. If I can sidetrack a little bit, I think the LLM is actually asking me a lot of questions. Which of these times will work best, and it's also asking me the name of me and my 8-year-old. It's maybe a potential improvement I can do here is actually to consolidate the LLM to only ask 1 to 2 questions max to not overwhelm the customer. My 8-year-old is actually very naughty and loud. Will this be of a concern for the teacher? The replies are a little bit more contextual to what you're typing. The more contextual you are, the assumption is that the higher the potential conversion. Now let's throw it some very weird questions, right? Who is Lee Kuan Yew? And the most important thing I think for these kind of WhatsApp automation is to make sure that it always stays on track. There's also measures in place to make sure it does not hallucinate and give fake information to the potential customers. So it's very important to have safeguards done in place. I've now started a new conversation just to demonstrate what actual booking would look like. So I'll say, "Hi, I'm interested to know more. I have a 5-year-old who have no experience," and I say that Tampines will be more convenient, and then I say that Saturday 11 a.m. works. Once all the information is gathered for a trial class, the school administrator will then step in manually to then confirm payment and the relevant details. Can I automate it a lot further to book a trial class and accept payment? I definitely can. This is just a prototype. The objective of this automation is just to step in and to quickly get the conversation from 0 to a trial class as soon as possible. For this automation to work, you need a Facebook developer app, you need an app ID, you need an app secret, and you need to enable WhatsApp over here. The credentials here is just for you to listen to WhatsApp messages, but you need a separate credential to then send out WhatsApp messages. Go to your Facebook developer app dashboard, click on WhatsApp, click on API setup. You'll then see this page, API setup, click on generate access token. Take note of the test number you have here, take note of the WhatsApp business account ID you have here, take note of the phone number ID you have here. Create a WhatsApp API credential in your n8n. You'll have your access token here. This is where you paste what you just copied. You have your business account ID. This is then copied from your WhatsApp business account ID over here. There should be a green notification to tell you that the credential is working all right. For the purposes of this video, I'll be using a test number of which Facebook will provide to you. Take note that the access token here is only for short-term testing purposes. So if you really want to bring it to production levels, you'll need to generate a long-term token for it. Because you're using a test number, I would say the expiry for this access token is pretty quick. From experience, I think it might expire within about 30 minutes to 45 minutes. So you constantly need to come back here to this access token to refresh it. Whereas for the credentials to listen to WhatsApp messages, you don't actually have to refresh this at all. Now for me to show you in extreme detail how the workflows work. So I'll go back to WhatsApp, click Yo. I'll go back to my n8n and then see the execution over here. Okay, you can see it's firing for a while and it should be completed in quite a bit of time. So you click on WhatsApp trigger, you can see the message that I sent over here, body yo. The next thing it does is then try to match any existing numbers I have in my database. The database I'm using here is NocoDB. It's an open source alternative to Airtable. The next node then checks if the number exists in the database or not. If the number doesn't exist in the database, it means they're messaging us for the first time and there's a specific flow for it. The next node then checks if it's a text message or not, because I realized for WhatsApp, especially when you're using the test number, they would actually send a lot of random some webhooks where it's actually not really relevant to your workflow. So it says type free customer service. Obviously, there's no WhatsApp text over here, and these are messages that I actually don't want to process in my workflow. But at the same time, my WhatsApp trigger is receiving these information. The next note you see here is the brand Bible for new numbers. This is where the magic happens. You have a brand Bible, you have previous conversation history, which is none because it's a new number that's messaging us. You have the user's message here, you have the profile name here, you have also the WhatsApp ID over here, which is just a phone number. The brand Bible is where the magic happens, right? This essentially is a long ass prompt that I just copy pasted and created with one of the LLMs. You have the core identity, you have the name of the school, you have the location, you have the mission, you have the brand voice, you have the objective of this. So, but I'll just be honest here, right? I'm basically just lumping a lot of context to the LLM so the LLM knows how to respond to their messages. The second part here is also important. You need to be very familiar with the programs and services the company has. So you need to put these details in extreme detail into the prompt itself. Location and classes is something you need to provide it as well. Pricing and policies is something you need to provide it. And you need to give the chatbot a very clear objective. Your number one goal is to convert an inquiry into a book trial lesson. Be helpful, but always steer the conversation towards this goal. The next important section would be to handle common objections. There are a lot of objections that potential customers might have. So you want to actually write down how you would actually do it in person and make sure the LLM knows how to do it in your manner and style. The next important section would be to handle uncertainty, which is the escape hatch. One common thing about LLMs, right, is that if you don't tell it to have an escape hatch, it tends to really just make up any information. As soon as the user is asking a question that's clearly outside the scope of Melody Grove Piano School, it must not invent an answer. So the moment it feels like it's not able to handle the customer's query, a human would then take over and a notification would then be sent to the school administrator or a human to then come in and reply with the correct information. If I can give you 3 things to take note of in this prompt, right, it would be 1, it is the handover trigger over here, 2, it's a stop over here, and 3, it's the unsure over here. So the moment any of these appear in the LLM prompt, it's a signal for the LLM to stop replying to the automation, and this is where a human needs to take over. Moving on to the prompt itself, I then consolidate everything I need for the LLM. I'm currently using Gemini 2.5, and everything in this note is actually meant to prepare and package information in a very neat way for the LLM. I don't know, from a best practice standpoint, it's not really very good because I'm just spamming the LLM, but I'll say this is a prototype. I do know that Google Gemini is very generous with their credits. For some businesses like this, they actually don't receive a lot of WhatsApp messages per day. Google Gemini can accommodate a few hundred prompts per day free of charge. As a prototype, I think this would work. Based on a user's message, generate your next response. The user's message is just yo. You have the brand Bible over here, and you have previous conversation history, which is none because this is a new number. After that, you can see the output here. Hi there, thanks for reaching out to Melody Grove Piano School. Are you asking for yourself or for your child? I then extract the LLM's reply. I then have the user's message. I then have the WhatsApp ID of the number. I also document the time over here because I want to store it in a database for usage later. This code note just removes the line in the LLM reply just to make it neater in the database. This is where I store the LLM reply. It's also part of the conversational history because every time the user submits a message, I want it to retrieve the conversational history just so it can create the best possible, most contextual reply based on the conversation that has happened so far. I have also stored the date of the last reply. You then actually send out a message, and this is the most important part. And that's where you can see here, this is the back end of the automation. I am asking lessons for myself. If I go back to the n8n workflow, if I click executions, there should be a running timer over here, which then processes the message that I have. It then replied, great, we have a wonderful adult leisure program perfect for you. To help me recommend the best fit, could you please tell me the following questions? So let us see the workflow over here. This is the text that I sent. I'm asking lessons for myself. I then have a database that pulls the past conversation. Every time a new user submits a query, there will be a creation of a row here, which is the database that I'm using. If you don't have NocoDB or Airtable, feel free to use Excel, but I must give a big warning when you use Google Sheets. API authorization code would usually need a lot of refreshing. From my experience, every 4 or 5 or 6 days, you need to manually refresh it. So I do find that the usage of Airtable or NocoDB credentials to be a lot more reliable and stable. And it also checks if the text body exists from the previous node, because if there's no text body, you don't want to process it in this workflow. The next node here then extracts the conversation history and the user's reply, and this is meant to prepare it for the LLM to process. Remember what I said about the prompt? The 3 most important things are the handoff trigger and unsure and stop. So this checks if there is any handover trigger, unsure, or stop within the conversational history. If there is any of these 3 terms, it means that it is time for the human to take over. There should not be any LLM processing any messages with these triggers in the message itself. If there's no handoff trigger, unsure, or stop, it will then proceed as false. After that, you then have the brand Bible, which is pretty much the same as the the new workflow. You have the brand Bible over here. You have the user's message, you have the profile name, you have the WhatsApp ID. This is where you put everything in the prompt itself. Based on the user's message, generate your next response. The most important thing is the conversation history. You can click this button over here and you'll see the previous conversation history over here. There'll be a response over here from the LLM, which is the output that we see here. The next node then checks if there's any handoff trigger, unsure or stop within the reply itself. If there's no handover trigger, unsure or stop, it'll proceed to the false branch. It'll extract the variables to be stored, and the last and most important thing to do here in this workflow is to then store the conversational history. I'll extract the old conversation history, and in this workflow there are two elements that are new, which is the user's reply and the WhatsApp bot reply. So I'll just extract it. I'm asking for my lessons for myself, at what time, what date, and I also have the WhatsApp bot reply over here at specifically what time. So you'll notice that the user reply here, I'm asking lessons for myself, exactly matches what you see on WhatsApp. My name is JJ. I have a little bit of experience and Tampines is more convenient for me. Look at this sentence over here. Now let's see how it happens on the back end in n8n. This is how it looks like, and just for me to recap very quickly, it pulls the past history, it checks if numbers exist in a database, and because it's an existing registered number, it goes to this side of the workflow, it gets all the conversational history, it checks if any of the conversational history contains any of these three elements. If it does not, it goes to the false branch, and it then passes through the brand Bible, and then the process repeats over and over again until it's sort of close to booking a trial class. 5 p.m. works. Great, I have all the details I need. Our school administrator will contact you via WhatsApp shortly to confirm the teacher's availability for the slot and finalize your $20 trial lesson booking for JJ. Thank you. Now let's see how it happens on the n8n backend. As you can see here, Tuesday 5 p.m. works, but I think where I'll give a caveat, right, and remind you the purpose of the prompt. So I'll narrow in on the prompt, which is the most important part, which is the handoff trigger. When the user has expressed clear interest in a trial lesson and you have collected the parent, student name, child name, piano experience, preferred outlet or potential day, your final message before the handoff should be this message over here. After sending this message, you must output a special code, handoff trigger on a new line. This code will be used by the automation system to stop talking and notify a human. Now let's see the specific output of the LLM. This is the actual output. This is where the magic sauce comes from. You can see handoff trigger is clearly labeled over here, but the thing is you don't want to send this ugly looking handoff trigger to the customer, right? So what do? I then have a code note that removes handoff triggers, unsure, stop if it is in the text of the LLMs. Handoff trigger over here, you have this code note and then the handoff trigger disappears because we don't want to send this ugly thing to the customer. So now it's all clean, now it's all good. I can then send it to the customer and you can see that all this is successfully sent. I then extract the variables to store in NocoDB, and this is where I think the most important part of the workflow is, because you need to make sure your database is updated in a very correct manner. So I update my conversational history. I also update this field here, do not contact, to be true. Back in my NocoDB database, you can see this field over here, it says do not contact, true or false. So if it's false, right, it means that I can keep following up with them consistently. But if it's true, it means that the LLM no longer has the right to reply to the customer, and that's where the human must take over. The automation is not perfect, right? Because actually I could probably automate a Gmail note or automatic email or SMS, a bit ironic, right? A WhatsApp message to be sent to the school administrator. But this is where you can really automate anything along the way. If the potential customer is not ready to book a trial class, let the LLM do the work to try and convince the user to then sign up for a trial class, because you want to get the boring work done by the LLM for you. Just to recap, the do not contact field is then updated to be true. If I go back to my NocoDB dashboard, you can see it's false here, but the moment I click refresh, it's then true over here. If I go back to my WhatsApp and I try to ask it further questions, the WhatsApp automation will not reply you. On the n8n backend, this is how it looks like. You can see my text over here that says, hey, but then there's no reply. Why? It gets the past data accordingly. It checks if a number exists. It's a conversation with an existing registered number. But you can see here, it checks whether the output contains a handoff trigger, unsure, or stop. Whenever we see a handoff trigger here, it means that a human is ready to convert. So because it is within the conversational history, it becomes true. So now let me show you other situations, right? If you ask it something that's not within a brand Bible, right? This is where the LLM should not make up any information. It says, I want to make sure you get the right information. I'll need to check with our school administrator administrator, and someone will get back to you here on WhatsApp shortly to assist. This is how it looks like on the n8n backend. Can you tell me the names of your piano teacher and how long have they been teaching? If this information is not within the brand Bible, you can then see there is an escape hatch for the LLM. This is the part where it's the most important over here. If the user asks a question that is clearly outside the scope of Melody Grove School, you must not invent an answer. Because this is done, you can then see the output of the LLM then contains unsure. So this is exactly the same process as what we have for the handoff trigger. If it contains either a handoff trigger, unsure, or stop, it removes the message just to make sure that it's clean to send to the customer, and then it stores this in the conversational history. If I go back to WhatsApp and ask it to reply, right, this is where the LLM will not reply, and this is where a human needs to step in to then provide the correct information. Let me show you the last scenario, which is stop. The automation sends, hello, thanks for reaching out. This is a standard message that will send out whenever it receives a WhatsApp message. You can maybe type some nasty response. I want you to stop messaging me. If the customer tells you to stop messaging them, right, you must stop messaging them. Maybe you encounter such situations where the customer sends you something very jarring, right? They want to sue you, you want to stop messaging me, right? So you say, automation will then say, we respect your request and won't send further messages. If you change your mind, feel free to reach out. Then if you can say, are you sure? Okay, act as a very angry customer, right? You can say, are you sure? It should not reply. By now, I think you can see a pattern of this workflow. You can see, are you sure? And in this case, it then checks for the conversational history and it says stop over here. Because it contains stop, it proceeds to the true branch, and then there's nothing else after the true branch. So the LLM does not reply in this case. Maybe I might put some additional automation, send an urgent email to the school administrator, tell them, okay, there's this customer that really doesn't want to be contacted. This is where you can add in further automations from there. Now let's proceed to the second workflow of this automation. The objective of the second workflow is to follow up with customers who drop off and don't reply within 24 hours. Why 24 hours? Follow-ups are sent within 24 hours to avoid using WhatsApp message templates, which require Meta's approval for messages sent after the 24-hour session window. If a customer sends you a message, any automation that you send within a 24-hour period from their message is actually free from my understanding. So if I do a quick Google over here, these are free for all businesses. As of November 1st, 2024, there is no limit on the number of free service conversations as long as they are within a 24-hour customer service window according to the WhatsApp business platform. If you want to automate a message that is sent 24 hours after they send you a message, that will require a template to be pre-approved by Meta, because Meta doesn't want you to automate like 3-day, 5-day workflows that are not approved based on LLM. So you actually need to go to a WhatsApp template library and create a template to be approved by WhatsApp. I'll probably make it a separate video on creating templates, so I'll not make it over here. But what is the automation in this second workflow? If the customer has not replied your message for 6 hours, 12 hours, or 18 hours, this workflow will then trigger another follow-up message to try to encourage the customer to reply to your message. The more times you follow up, the higher the likelihood that they might reply. If they reply, there's only two options, right? They either reply you to stop messaging them, or they reply you to say they're interested. So either way, it's sort of good. If they want you to stop messaging them, we have the precautions in the first workflow to make sure that the LLM stops replying them. So let me use a new example. I said yo over here, then there's a standard template which says, hello there, welcome to Melody Grove Piano School. Are you looking for lessons for yourself or your child? Let's check my database. It is already inserted over here. Now let me go to my second workflow and click execute workflow. So this workflow triggers every single hour. It goes to your NocoDB database to pull all the existing numbers that you have. There's a filter note here, do not contact. If do not contact is true, it either means the handoff trigger fired, it either means the unsure trigger fired, or it either means the stop trigger fired. So in this case, if it's any of these, right, there will be no automations fired for this workflow, because the objective of this workflow is to keep following up with prospects until they either say no or they are interested in our offer. The next workflow changes the date time to Singapore time. So if you are using this workflow, please make sure to adjust it based on your own time zone. The next workflow calculates the number of hours since the last reply. It will then calculate, okay, how many hours has it been since the customer has replied. For the purposes of this video, I'll manually edit the output just to show you how this automation works. The time now is about 10 PM in Singapore, so I'll say 10 minus 6 is 16. So I'll click save and I'll click execute workflow. So this assumes that the conversation happened at 4 o'clock and the time now is 10 PM and the customer didn't reply. This workflow will then trigger, and as you can see here, the top layer here, it fires. And let me then show you what happens on WhatsApp. So there's just this simple follow-up message. Hi there, just wanted to gently follow up on your message from earlier. Were you looking for a piano lesson for yourself or for a child? It is free to follow up via automation, and you can follow up as many times as you want. Now let me run through in detail the notes over here. It checks if they have received a 6-hour follow-up. Going to my database, you can see here, has received 6-hour follow-up or not. False. If I click refresh, this will then turn to true. Because the workflow at the back does update it to be true, I don't want to send a customer a 6-hour notification repeatedly because it might be too irritating. I only want to send them the automation once, and that's all. The other parts of the prompt are relatively straightforward. It extracts the conversational history, it extracts the WhatsApp ID. It also has the brand Bible, which is exactly the same thing as workflow 1. It then has exactly the same prompt. I think the only part where I really adjusted would be the first line over here. You're following up with a user who hasn't responded in 6 hours since their last reply. Generate a polite message in line with the company info to follow up gently in a non-pushy manner. It then sends a message. It then updates the NocoDB database. It then removes all the spaces. It then stores the conversation history exactly like what we did in workflow 1. For this row over here, it's automation at the 12-hour mark, and for the third row here, it's the automation at the 18-hour mark. This is a prototype I'm still building in the midst of some current clients that I will be implementing this for. Let me know if you have any thoughts or questions, comments, and I'll see you in the next one.